I turned my phone off.
Go to sleep mode. It kind of looks like I have red hair when I look on the screen.
Oh no.
And we're back.
Welcome to episode 6 of Form Check Friday with me, Seth. You know who I am because you're watching my channel, but we got my lovely co-host.
I'm his wife. I'm Mianna, and I actually wilts more than him.
So she claims. She actually does wilts more than me, which, I mean, I'm trying to do something about it right now with the whole weight loss thing, so give me like 9 more months and we'll see about that. But today is Form Check Friday, so we're hopping inside of Team Activated to look at some lifts because every Friday I post a thread asking the people to post their videos so they can get cyberbullied by us on the YouTube channel. But one of the bigger reasons I like running these guys is that one of the more common questions we get asked is, how do I get better at looking at lifts? How do I get better at getting form checks? And the easiest answer to that is
practice.
Because like any skill, getting better at analyzing lifts will require you to analyze lifts so you can get better at analyzing lifts. And the hope behind this video is that if you can see the same lift we're looking at, see what we're looking for, seeing what we're noticing, you can help refine your own skill. And if you don't know what Team Activated is, it is an online community that I have created with the big goal of making powerlifting coaching better. Because you often hear how powerlifting coaching can't be super high quality, timely in response, and affordable all at once. Well, we're breaking the freaking mold because every single day there are there's hundreds of lifters in there right now.
There are hundreds, yes.
Hundreds of lifters in there right now, posting their lifts, posting their training, getting direct feedback from me on everything that they want feedback on so I can help them figure out how to optimize their technique, optimize their training, optimize their programming so they can get better. So if you want to get better as a powerlifter or develop a better coaching eye as a coach, join the team because you're going to get so much help. You're going to get to see so many lifts. You're going to get to learn so much. And right now it's only $39 a month. That price is getting jacked up April 1st so we can keep maintaining the absolute highest quality possible. So hop in before the price goes up because you don't want to miss out on that. But let's get to her. You want to start from the top or the bottom today?
Let's do the top because I think there's more than 10 and we're going to stop at 10.
I think we can.
Do I do 11?
There's 11. We can cut it at 11.
Nice. We'll be nice to number 11.
We'll bully whoever's last.
Yeah.
For not reading or counting.
Yeah.
I'm the only one not allowed to count on this YouTube channel. But we got Kelvin here as our first commenter, thread dropper, squat poster.
Mm-hmm.
And if you guys remembered last week, Kelvin was running some high bar 1.5s. And what we're talking about is, by the way, if you haven't looked at any of these videos in the thread yet, so you're going to see our immediate reaction. But last week, we know Kelvin was running his high bar 1.5s, looked like he was running to the ankle room, wasn't getting into the knees, and something that Mianna talked about.
I was telling him that he should try a heeled shoe just so he can get his knees a little bit further forward, a little better ankle movement going on.
Yeah, and he says...
Make up for the lack of ankle movement, I should say.
And he forgot his heels at home, so he spent 30 minutes looking for a wedge. So curious to see if all of that time spent wedge searching did pay off for him. But... walking around, this is one of those little skinny wedges. I hate these.
So that's a big wedge.
It's really, I mean, like little skinny in that dimension.
But it's also very high. I think this is, and he switched to low bar too, right? Is this low bar?
I'm pretty sure this is still high.
Is this still high bar?
High-ish.
It looks better.
Definitely. And
I wish we had, we could like show people the video of what it looked like before. Because he still is rounding some through his back, but it's so much better than before. It looks like he has a little bit more room.
Absolutely. And the big thing too is like last week, his knee travel, like he's going there and like stop like there where the mouse is. And he was just forced to crumple to get down to depth. And like that crumple still is there a little bit, but this is so much better. And I'm almost wondering with the width-wise skinniness of that wedge, if that's kind of shooting the foot a little bit, because it looks like with the nature of this wedge, how high it is, I bet his Olympic shoes would just let him trust sitting into it right now because this is so steep that it probably feels like he's going to get a little bit tipped forward if he really does shove these in. So I think that Olympic shoes should definitely clean this up a little bit more for him. And the thing that I want to clean up is seeing, can we not sacrifice upper back tension and still make it down there? And part of that might be I can't see his head, but because I can't really see his head behind the plates and kind of see creeping out, he's pretty head freaking forward. So I think like next week, what I want to see for sure is I want to get him in those Olympic shoes and see if we can use the forefoot pressure and take advantage of the forefoot pressure because we're not going to fall over because we're not at a really steep wedge. And then pack that head freaking hard, get that head back, because that should help with the balance situation, and it should help him get a lot more sit down going, get into the quads. But this is so much better than last week that this kind of confirms that, yes, heel elevation, good thing for Kelvin. We probably just need a less janky heel elevation situation.
But at least like this shows that it is working in the right direction. It's more messy.
Yes. And Kelvin is pretty new here, so we haven't done a whole lot yet, but this is coming along. And what I'm kind of looking for as I'm going week to week with lifters is I don't want it to be fixed instantly. I just want it to kind of come around and start getting better. And the last kind of thing that I've talked about previously is the brace belt situation as well, because you're kind of looking at it, he is letting go of a little bit of tension through the abdomen and the hole. So I think I might still want to go a hole looser on the belt and just really focus on just expanding and reaching out and see if we can create more rigidity down here to complement that head pack. And I think that should lead to a much better squat.
Do you want to talk maybe about like the eye that we had that we were looking at of like the symptom is not always the cause? Whereas when we first saw him do these squats, it was like a lot of crumpling, and it would be really easy to like tell him that he needs to
fix the upper back,
fix the arch. But the symptom is not always the cause. What we were looking at was more so ankles, knees.
Because what's happening up here is, again, it still looks like we need a little bit more that way. Mm-hmm. And another thing I'm wondering too, I guess now that Miana's bringing that up, is with this wedge, it might help him to get a tiny bit wider as well to make more room for the femurs in that regard. But I think, again, he's limited by the wedge width here to really be comfortable getting out there. So next week, heel choose for sure, maybe a little bit wider stance, and we should be able to make her look prettier again, especially with the head pack, a little bit looser belt, brace down really hard.
Yeah.
So on to number 2, we got Matt here doing some Jefferson curls.
I feel like I need you to read these all for me because I'm like, I'm showing how blind I am.
Machine. Start with the Jefferson curls.
Jefferson curls, okay. I'm on, okay.
Interesting.
So my first thought, he actually fixed it on this one.
Yep. That first rep, that weird scap.
Yeah, it was the scapula. You want the scaps to be last on a Jefferson curl, preferably. Like, I like to think of it as like one vertebrae at a time. So I keep trying to point to the monitor, but we would want to start with like the lumbars and then kind of like finish up at the top. But he would kind of like pull the head up a little bit at the top as well. But
and again, I think for like what Matt's doing this for is he's just kind of looking for some like erector exposure, just a little bit of getting a nice little back pump there, nothing too crazy. And I think that for that context of just trying to get more support with controlling rounding, I'd say this is probably going to do the job. And I think like the only thing that I like to make sure on with the Jefferson curl is that on the way down, we're not just lowering the weight. I almost want to think of it like a reverse sit-up where we're flexing abs to pull us into that controlled flexion versus just going into it, because we have the ab flexion co-contraction. That is going to be a little bit protective of the discs so that we can then train the discs to get better at moving so that we are less risk of shit blowing up in the future.
Yeah.
But I think that this is really solid. It's not a movement that I would want to be extremely aggressive pushing load on. I think like with the big range of motion, with the kind of potential for things to get sideways, I think this is better served as like a therapeutic movement for most people. Mm-hmm. But Matt's also running some stiff legs with a little bit of round too, and that's his heavy push. I wish he would have posted these instead of the Jefferson curls.
Probably just wants to make sure he's doing them right.
Yeah, but again, I think like that's checking the boxes, especially if he is gonna get some more ab on pulling down.
I like to even think about pulling my belly button up towards my spine as I'm doing the Jefferson curl.
Mm-hmm. And we're looking at him on the notchless plate loaded row. And this doesn't look like a lot of weight, but now that I've experienced these machines at the Realm, they are so freaking heavy that, like, even though this isn't a lot of weight, it's going to be doing something. Now, depending on what he's trying to get out of this, we'll see how confident.
I was going to say, I want intent. What's the intent?
He just says he can attach handles to it for a little bit better squeeze.
So this is kind of like what my issue is it's like, it kind of looks like there isn't intent here and what he's trying to squeeze. So I'm like not really sure.
It looks like he's just pulling the handle.
Exactly.
Getting at, because like it doesn't really look like a super upper back row, but there's still a lot of upper back in it if he is trying to touch lat.
Yeah.
And what I'm thinking, like if I am trying to target more upper back, more rear delt, more carries, more rhomboid, is I'm trying to think wider elbow spread and try to pull the elbows high. If I'm thinking about trying to get more lat on a machine like this, my goal is going to be to try to drop the elbows low. And we're going to be sacrificing a little bit of pull behind us. We are going for lat intent, but lat leverages. The lat runs out of pulling at the plane to the rib cage. So it's okay if we don't get all the way down. So I think like knowing what Matt needs on his squat or his deadlift, if he's running with this machine, I would much rather see a low elbow drive and really trying to pack everything down there and really feel it right there. That should help Mel get a little bit.
Yeah.
Get a little out of it.
Also, like again, like elbow down, kind of like elbow towards the hip is kind of what I like to think. And I would also maybe want to see head position at least just like stay the same the entire time.
Yeah. And one of the things that people often kind of do on the rows is they start like flinging the head forward because it lets them get the elbows further back. But if you're just flinging the head forward and get the elbows further back, you're moving the rib cage, not moving the humerus.
Yeah.
So it ain't helping you with that goal. And moving on, we got Cole here. He hasn't posted too much in here, so excited to see what we are going to be looking at. First video is the Wave 1 Week 3 team programming. Second video is the most recent squat he's done max effort-wise. And he's grabbed for adductor strain, spent the majority of the waves working on bottom end part of the squat. And with the team programming in here, I want to make a note is I'm building in flexibility in the programming so that the goal isn't to be like, hey, here's the perfect program to run. What I want guys to do is learn from the team and think about what they're doing so that they can modify the flexibility options in the team program to better fit their needs. And curious to see how this is looking now. So this is his first week squat. And what do you see with that stick?
Go back. My very first thought was, I don't hate it.
But you can kind of see the knees,
just a little bit.
Knees re-come forward a little bit. And if the knees need to go forward again at this point in the squat, usually that tells me that where the glutes need to be kicking in, the glutes aren't quite there to do their job, so that we then need to shift into the quads to finish the squat without dying.
Yeah.
And I think too with the adductor strain is I'd be thinking if the glutes aren't quite up to snuff, that is going to expose adductor magnus a little bit more as well. Mm-hmm. So like what I'm thinking looking at this one is hopefully we see an improvement in glutes coming into his next one.
You just pause for a second. The shirt matches the shorts and perfectly. Just saying. Just saying.
But do you see that?
It's dope, dude.
Yeah, like the knee re-come forward, way freaking better. And what's cool is you can kind of see that he's having that little bit of when he gets sticky, the shift has changed because now the knees are coming in a little bit, whereas before, if we look at it, we have that knee squirting forward.
Yeah.
Now, what is happening now is if we're thinking about leverage around the hip, what is going to give the glute max a mechanical advantage in that position so that it can take more work is a little bit of knee in, because the more out the knees are, the more it's going to ask of those adductors. So what I'm thinking in this context is now that it doesn't look glute limited, okay, we probably got to start prioritizing the adductors more to then catch up to what the glutes are doing. And what I'd be thinking of that is if he has access to like a leg press or hack squat, like one of the easiest ways to get some adductors into a squat is to just go wide on the leg press or hack squat.
Yeah.
Next option, probably a belt squat, maybe a sumo deadlift, maybe a wide box squat. But I don't think that the setup matters as much as whether or not we can access the adductors in a controlled manner and make sure that we're not kicking out of them. And the big reason for hack or leg press is because the machine is stabilized, it makes it really easy to put the work where we want to put it. So I think that's what I want to be jamming on as a secondary or accessory slot moving forward. And we should be able to clean up that knee waiver a little bit more. But I'm stoked with the direction he's been going. And he said in the comment that he hasn't posted a lot in here, so I haven't seen much from him. So it's really cool to see that even without getting the direct feedback, because he's not posting, it's coming along and he's learning and going.
Solid technique, though. It's like, it's really cool when you see lifters who it's like at first glance, like it looks good.
Yeah, everything's well situated. Like there's nothing like
things
strategy wise that I think is going wrong here. Because like the head is beautiful, brace is beautiful, foot pressure is freaking beautiful. It's just that you can kind of see when he gets sticky, he's shifting out of glutes, shifting into quads on this one.
Yeah.
And then when he gets sticky, everything's still beautifully situated. It's just that when it does slow down, he's then shifting more into the glute max away from the adductor.
Yeah. But he's in a really cool spot though, where when he does have that technique breakdown, it's like a little bit more obvious of what he needs to work on building up, which is really cool.
And what I also want to notice is look at the plates in the bar got a fat average band reverse band.
He's gotten stronger.
He's got more weight on the bar with no reverse band. So stuff's working. So props to you, Cole, for doing your job. I would prefer if you posted more so we can kind of give you more help. But anyways, really clean looking squats. Now we got Kelvin in here, who is another person who hasn't been posting a ton. So curious to see if there is any improvement from the first video that I saw from him, because I know he's dealing with some really nasty hip stuff, like definite degeneration of the hips, and it looked like it was really getting in the way of his glutes on deadlift lockout. So we gave him some hip isometrics, some glute isometrics, some accessory suggestions to try to get a little bit more glutes kicking. So I'm very curious to see if the glutes are a little bit closer to kicking here. Patient pumps. And we still got a little bit of ramp. Mm-hmm. And I think like a lot of times with deadlift mid-range sticking points, if I'm going to be thinking hamstrings, what I'm looking for is knees kind of like shoving under the bar, because the knees have to shove under the bar. That tells us that it's letting the hamstrings get shorter, the weight actually having to be lifted by the hams. But this here, he still does have that little bit of ramp going on that kind of like might look like hammy to untrained eye, but because the knees aren't really coming under, it's kind of telling you that he's using the ramp to skirt away from the glutes. So that still is something that we definitely want to get more going on, just so he has the glute to drive the lockout. But I think the big thing here for me is from the first video I saw from him, this looks like it is doing way better glute-wise. So basically, I think what we need to do is just stay on the stuff that I told him to run, and it should continue to improve. Now, he's running some double pauses here to blow up everything, apparently. Whoa. Strict-ish pause. Now, I think that with what he has going on, a lot of times people like will say deficits to build lockout, right? Because the deficit kind of makes the starting position a little bit shittier, and then because the starting position is a little bit shittier, it gets harder on erectors to be able to finish. But I think like if it is a glute kind of lockout thing, I would rather do something that's not a deficit to better drive the glutes, because off a deficit, if it does become like position limited, spine limited, it's not really going to be training the glutes as hard as they could be. So what I think I'd rather see in this slot than a deficit is going to be like a moderate height block pull with a semi-stiff leg, really braced torso, so we can kind of try to make it as much glute as we can. I think that would probably do better for fixing his deadlift lockout. And what I'd be looking for in those block pulls is to see if we can do them without needing to ramp. Because if he needs to ramp in the block pull, we're going away from the glutes, so we want to kind of keep it under that ramp threshold. So actually building the pattern that we want to see.
I'm forgetting the name of it, but what about the Spono version of a deadlift? What is the thing that I'm...
The halting deadlift.
Thank you.
Yeah, where someone would be lifting the bar at the top, pausing 1 or 2 inches off the floor, and then going back up to the top. I think that could be another good option, but I think like since it is something that's really getting exposed more at heavier weights, I'd rather see a block pull than halting, because the block pull is going to be better for getting the heavy weights going.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
And going on to Justin's stuff. So Justin is someone who has been, when he was first got into deadlifting, he was like, his back looked like a C. Like, not way. Like he was bent upward, like super overarched. So we're trying to get him to learn how to have a little bit longer hang, a little, not really necessarily thoracic flexion, but just a little bit lower ribcage position, just so that he can take advantage of his levers versus shooting his ass way back and just being way too low.
I think we said previously that he was an Olympic lifter previously, right? Was he?
Think of the wrong person.
Wrong person? Never mind. Ignore me.
But similar pattern.
But similar pattern.
Yeah, I was thinking of Adrian's. But with this, I think that like looking at it, this is definitely going in the right direction. Now, what I might try to do is, he still does have that chin squirting away from him. And I know for myself, when my chin is squirting, it is a matter of not having enough here pulling the ribcage down, because kind of the patterning tension neurologically, it's going to be connected to our head position. So I think that kind of just tells us that the head pack looks intentional. He's just losing a little bit of that anterior tension. So what I would be thinking here is, when he's going to the deadlift bar, I would really like try to, again, similar to what I was talking about with Matt and the Jefferson curl, is it's going to be different than Jefferson curl because Jefferson curl, the pure goal is to access spinal flexion. A deadlift is to just get into a really solid braced position. So we want to have a little bit more just pulling this down. Doesn't need to be like a huge degree. Like the motion that I'm doing is probably more than he needs to do. There's a little bit more tension this way. Incorporate the head pack into that. And I think that he should be able to get the mid-back arch to calm down a little bit. And it should let him get the hips a bit closer to the bar.
Mm-hmm.
What else are you seeing?
There's a bit of a shrug at the top on a lot of his lifts. So I would just want to see him like let the bar hang a bit better at the top.
And at the bottom.
And at the bottom.
Because again, if you're looking at how the bar is breaking, you got to see, like, if we're watching right as he sets her down.
Oh, yeah.
The shoulder blades let go. And if the shoulder blades are letting go as you're lifting the bar, you're just going to be better off by having them more let go to start because they're going to go there anyways.
Yeah.
And if the arms are hanging longer, we're going to have a more favorable position to start from. But I think that overall, like, it's going in the right direction. I just need to, like, arms are ropes.
Yeah.
Let them hang.
Exactly.
Don't be trying to pull the bar to you.
Top and bottom.
Yep.
Whole way through.
And I think, like, the top is a reflection of the
bottom.
So
yeah.
definitely something we can be working on. Now, got James running a 2-count bench for his max effort press movement of the day. Essentially, on the first rep was trash, working on pulling myself from the bar and experimenting with a slightly wider grip than normal. Ring fingers on the ring instead of pinky. So curious to see how this looks group-wise. And looking at his earlier bench videos, one of the kind of things I was complaining about was wrist position, hand tightness, everything going on. You kind of see on the unrack, it was a little bit wobbly. And I think what I'm kind of a big thing that I'm thinking is, number one is just like general tightness everywhere. And the reason I'm thinking that is, again, like we've got some square bend of the hands, we got some square bend of the elbows, we got some square bend of the legs, we got the bar dropping on ourselves on the very first rep. So I think if we could just like learn to really drive through the floor harder. So if he's sitting here before the unrock, what I want to learn how to do is get more tension driving the foot forward, trying to push his traps up the bench. And then once he has that set, then we want to think about pulling the bar into the J-hooks while squeezing the living share of it by pulling with lat. And if we can get that leg drag to kind of connect to that lat tension, so like the legs are trying to push the ribcage up this way, the lat's trying to pull the ribcage up from the bottom, we get a bunch of tension meeting kind of in the mid-back right underneath the sternum. I bet if you can find that, then we'd be able to clean up the eccentric a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's like, it kind of just starts from like the setup tension, and just not having tension on the setup leads to not quite enough tension everywhere else. And like pressing the first rep looks like it kind of forced him to get a little bit tighter, but he's still dropping it on himself just a hair. So I want to definitely see if we can just build more tension. And what's cool is like, it does get better every single rep. But with tightness problems, if it is tightness, like doing reps can kind of help you get more tighter. It's like how a lot of times people, the first rep of deadlift sucks, but because the second rep, how the first rep leading into it, it gets better. Same thing for bench. So I want to just, or for any lift really, if the guy's too loose for the setup, we just want to learn to get cranked in more. And I think, go ahead.
I was going to say two things. First off, those rogue bumper plates are sick. I don't know if you noticed those.
Yes.
Camo. That's awesome. Anyways, I would suggest, if he can, as a secondary movement, doing either tempo work, slow eccentric tempo work, to force creating tension on the way down, if he can, or even like a slow eccentric Spoto as well. I think could be cool.
Yeah, and I think he's running Spotos for his D right now. What I was kind of complaining to
tempos might be better.
What I was complaining to him about on the Spotos is the catches were a little bit sloppy. So I think, again, like the tempoing into a Spoto, like doing a 3-count eccentric, 2-count pause, then blasting as hard as he can. Could help him out with learning to create more tension when he is benching. But again, like the big thing is just harder legs from the get-go, harder lats from the get-go, and everything should fall into place a little bit better. Now we've got Tyler here, banded deadlift single from last week, 425 with a green band, call it an RB9. Felt harder than it should have, so looking for some advice. Seems like he's starting with his hips a little bit low. And again, like, if I was talking to him, if we're actually in the threads, I'd be asking like, okay, what is the context that you're saying that it felt harder than it should? Because with bands, and then I haven't seen a ton of band pulls from him, so I'm not sure if this is kind of a newer banded level for him or something that he hasn't run before.
Bands almost always feel harder than they should.
Yes, that's what I'm getting at. Because if I haven't seen a ton of bands for him, so I'm assuming that this is not a normal variation. bands feel like balls. Like, if I think about like my best pulls versus band versus my best pulls versus straight weight, my best pulls versus a band, accounting the band resistance on the bar, is less than my best pull with straight weight. So like for whatever reason, bands on deadlifts, they are super, super, super freaking hard.
Also under the feet too. Oh,
That's going to make it worse. So
good for you. No, that's nice.
But in terms of looking at the deadlift itself, what are you thinking?
Can we restart? My only thing, he has that kick out. I think he could be pulling the bar in towards him harder at the bottom.
Yes.
Like it's almost like he's bringing his legs to his arms, but not, the other way around.
And I think it is a little bit similar to Justin, where it doesn't quite let go, but I think he does have too much like up and not enough in.
Yeah.
So like he's kind of like setting the gap, setting less by pulling backwards versus reaching long and pulling towards it.
Yeah.
And I think a little bit more of like trying to get that closer to that and like pulling the rib cage towards the arms, the lats, could help him push in harder and could kind of keep him over the bar, because what's kind of happening is he's wedging a little bit too far behind, so he's shifting backwards and he has to shift forward for the bar to break. And the other focus point that I want is trying to find a little bit more toe pressure, which probably isn't helped by the bands under the feet.
I was just thinking about that.
It kind of looks like he's losing a little bit of quad tension as he's wedging in, which might be making the pop off the floor a bit harder.
Yeah.
But I think that if he is going to be running bands regularly, looks like he's on a homemade deadlift platform. So it might be worth finding a way to rig up some band pegs on there, because that'll make his life way better. Because like bands are hard as is. The bands under the feet suck. I think kind of the last thing as well is, I think on that, the bar does look a little bit far away from him. But again, I'm not sure if that is going to be due to the bands kind of jacking up the groove through the mid-range, or if it is a positioning thing. So again, I think like knowing how his pull has looked before, I want to kind of attribute the being a little bit far away from him through the mid as being a band thing, not his deadlift thing.
Yeah.
So I think it is just acknowledging that this is a hardest ball setup. And I think a little bit more like lat pull in or lat pulling ribcage towards bar would help that hardest ball setup get better, but it's still going to be a very, very, very difficult one to make work with bands for the feet. And bands are hard as is. Under the feet just sucks more. But we got Justin here running some 1.5s as well and wants to get an eye on some depth here. Now, world's longest walkout.
Bro, what was it? Where are you going?
Yep.
I was half expecting him to walk out of frame.
And something I've talked to him about before is head back. And what I want to kind of point out is that the head is not really good here, but he establishes it after some fiddling around. What I want to do is establish that head pack, like right here. Get the head pack right here. Get it out, get it situated, and then don't move that sucker. And it might help if we, make the walkout 3 steps instead of 7. But looking at the squat itself, once he gets the head situated, pretty happy with the depth, pretty happy with the overall situation. And I think like if I'm looking at 1.5, this is going to be his speed work, so it is a little bit light. But what I'd want to see is on the first whole hit to the 0.5 is really try to get to that 0.5 hard. Like try to push out of the hole freaking hard to get that 0.5. Yeah. And then at that 0.5, he's kind of just like rushing it and going back down. I want to see a tiny bit of pause so we can have a focus on his brace, focus on hip tension, and then just dive bomb into that brace, dive bomb into the hip tension.
Yeah.
And dive bombing a squat is not something that I normally recommend, but on a 1.5, it can make us really comfortable with having an assertive rebound to the bottom, which I find can be super, super, super good for carrying over into not hesitating when we do a big squat on their backs.
Yeah, the cue that I use for Seth while he's doing these are when he's coming into that 0.5, hold, pull. And I want him to like actively pull everything down.
Yes, because that's at that 0.5 point, I'm like trying to hold all the tension I can. I'm trying to like use that tension to pull into a harder rebound. And it just makes my max upper squat the next session feel so freaking snappy if I can have a better rebound on that second one. Now, he's running some stiffies, head tighter is what he's thinking.
I mean, yeah.
But I think like a lot of it is just like, at the start of this one, Like he's checking his hand, checking the plate or something. Then he's looking around the gym.
Like he saw somebody.
Just quit looking around is the first thing.
This honestly reminds me of when I was working with a coach when I very first started powerlifting. He's like, where are you always looking? Stop it. Exactly the same thing, because I have ADD. I needed to, like, at that point in my lifting career, I needed to have something like a plate on the floor or something to like have my eyes hang on to so I wouldn't like have a squirmy eye situation.
Yep. In regards to the head positioning as he's going, I think my big goal with any real hinge is to try to keep the head in relative alignment with the torso. And that is for no reason other than if we're trying to get a stiff leg to carry into a deadlift, we want the head packed, braced with the torso so you can create the most rigid torso total spine situation possible. And running that intent on a stiff leg can be a really good way to practice it because a stiff leg kind of does want to make you flick up. But if we can maintain that head pack on a stiff leg, they can get way easier to kind of learn to feel the tension that we want on a deadlift, so it can work better on an actual deadlift. But other than that, like the stiff leg looks pretty solid. So just number one, quit looking around. And then number two, don't try to look up as the bar is going down. Just try to keep everything tracking in relative line. Now we got Austin here. Very amazing, fun bench day last week. Bench has not been his friend, more like an enemy, to be honest.
Oh, okay. So is this sarcasm?
So
was it actually a fun bench day or no?
Saw this session in the thread. Yeah, so I cheated a little bit. But context is that from my end, he's used to training at a gym with like a really good bench pad. And then he has the home gym session on the janky, slippery, pseudo leather thing. And it looks like he's just not set really at all on that pad.
It also looks like he had happened what happened to me yesterday on my bench or on Wednesday.
Where the rack height is so low that he can't really get tight under it, can't find lat. So like this was a session that he was really upset with because it was basing expectations off of the bench that he's used to, where the rack height is better, where the bench pad's better. And I think like one of the problems like with like a fat pad, nice bench pad is that if a lifter gets used to it, if they have to go onto a pad that sucks, then the pad that sucks really freaking sucks. But if they're more used to, you know, a standard bench pad versus a fat pad, then the sucky one will be less sucky. But if they're used to a sucky one, the fat pad will just feel like a vacation. And again, I think a lot of this is like, okay, his setup, he needs more lat. But again, it's like when the rack height isn't, but he's not doing a quarter of a bench press to get the bar out, he's able to find more lat.
Yep.
When he's not on a slippery bench pad, he's able to find more leg. So again, I think a lot of this is more of just like if you are someone who's used to training on good equipment, then you have to go to substandard equipment. It's one of those things where we need to adjust expectations to the equipment versus just thinking like you should be able to do the same thing. And I'm not saying to make excuses. We don't want to make excuses around equipment, but if a setup is going to be harder, similar to what we're talking about with the band pulls, we need to acknowledge that the setup will be harder just so that we can make the best choices possible in loading.
And one thing that I tried to do on my bench on Wednesday, when it was too low, it was kind of the similar issue where it was like kind of getting like squirmy and out of my lats. If you can, after that unrack, just like take a second, not even just a second, take an extra 2 seconds and like try to like rebuild the tension, try to like break the bar and find those lats before you start.
Yeah, because he's just kind of getting her out there. Elbows are still soft and his bar is still wandering. Like he's not, he is like taking some time, but it's wandering time versus time building tension. Yeah. It's probably like the, oh shit, this feels not good.
Yeah. Why does this feel so heavy? Which is exactly how I felt on Wednesday when my bar was too low.
And I think like a skill that a lifter will develop over the years too is like, if they do have an unrack that feels freaking wrong, is if you want to panic when it feels freaking wrong and stuff doesn't feel situated. But if you can learn to switch that panic into okay, let's regroup once the bar is out and try to find more tension, then you should have a better fighting chance at making it better. So again, like this is one of the ones where based on his most recent benches on the good pad, not very good. But I'd say like considering the substandard basement setup, I'd say I'm at least okay with that. I think the only thing that I definitely want to do better with is like, if he is going to be going onto that bench pad, is to not expect the same performance as the good bench.
Sidebar, go back to it.
Yep.
Because like he definitely can't with that grip go higher. I'm wondering if on these days it might be better for him to go on higher and do like a close grip bench instead.
Yeah, that might have been a more valuable variation on it, because a close grip might say, like, watching where...
Because he's not going to make it on this, but he might make it close grip.
Yeah, so...
It might make for a better bench day.
Yeah.
Because he can actually get into his lats and unrack it properly.
Yeah, so that could be something, too, if he knows he has to be in here, is like running a close grip board press.
Yeah.
Just so that it's kind of a weird variation and we're not being, like, forced to have the same pressure to hit a number. Because, like, for me, if I have to go to a gym where, like, I know everything's going to be shit, I'm just going to do something weird from that separate variation, so I have no expectations, and that can make a more
like
enjoyable day.
I don't know if he has like a buffalo bar or something like that. It could be interesting as well. But
yeah, and the buffalo bar, I don't think he has one based in the gym, man. But
never mind.
Yeah.
Go on.
Specialty equipment in a gym. Tough to find sometimes. But going on to Martin's. Last week's deadlift out of 6, wave 6 week 1. Mine went blank as soon as he started thinking about it. Double at 6 and 2 more sets anyway. Trying to get his speed back while not being an idiot. It's a process to say the least. So let's take a look. Nose is itchy.
Me too. What do you think about his foot stance?
Yes.
What do you think? I think it might be too wide, but
and kind of, again, like knowing a little bit of what's going on here, it might be one of those things where we might really have to kind of crank some glute med length, crank some piriformis length, just so we can try to get a little bit more like foot under knee in the horizontal plane, because he is a little bit like, his knees look like they're a little bit further in than they want to be. And I think that might be getting in the way of how assertive he does feel on leg drive. Yep. So I think that a little bit of like the pop on the floor is going to be, the stance looks a little bit wide, toes might look a little bit out. And if he got a little bit more compacted, kind of like try to use adductors to pull into himself versus just like using adductors to roll in so he can fit and actively like create tension, trying to like jam thighs against torso.
Yeah.
I bet that could lead to a lot more pop out of the bottom. And again, I think it might be a little bit of a hip range limitation right now. So that'd be like a really good reason to get onto, I have it posted as like heel elevated hip ham stretch in the movement library. Like that would be a really, really, really good one to jam on prior to deadlifts and away from training as well. So we can kind of get the hips into place where he can afford a tiny bit narrower in stance. But other than that, he's a fucking good puller. Like
solid otherwise.
There's a reason he pulls in the 7s.
It's just, I was kind of wondering, I was like, how many, I'm trying to do mental math in my head, but the biggest thing for me is like, I looked at the feet, I looked at the knees, and it looks like there's just a big energy leak happening there.
Yeah, absolutely. So that should be like a easy in theory fix, but I think we gotta get a little bit more range back before we can go. Now we got Bryce here, and he's a couple months into it. He's one of the guys that is posting a lot, which is cool to see, because the more someone posts, the more help we can give them. And it's a work in progress, because as you can see here, there was a lot of loosey-goosey, a lot of squirming, a lot of wiggling, a lot of not really creating tension going on into a very long setup where there's just no tension.
Still no tension. Sick. That was his first one, right?
First one.
Okay. I'll let it slide. Yeah, very loosey-goosey.
Yeah, just general, like the biggest thing at the beginning was like, just be like, hey, we need to freaking get tighter every day. And again, it's kind of a common theme. It kind of like the big thing that I kind of like try to get at with lifters in terms of creating time. He's going to go towards more of the working-ish sets. But it looks like most of everything is way better situated now. Like we have much less ribcage squirming. We do have some of that bar kind of dropping onto enlarged Sizzling James. And what I've talked to him about is, what I want to kind of see him experiment with is running a floor press. I'll see the unrack on this one too, just to talk about it. But I think that it still is a little bit too pressy on the unrack, not pulley enough. And I think if we can get a little bit more pull through the unrack, I think that will help him support the bottom end better. But what I want him running as a secondary right now is I want him running a floor press with the intent of pulling the triceps into the floor, so that he can then use the tricep into the floor pull to help lift his chest. And I think that should help with the bottom end hold up. And go ahead.
One thing I was going to say is when he does do floor press, the one thing that I would really try to be
strict on.
Strict on is not letting the weight rest at the bottom.
No, I want that.
You want that.
I want that. I want him to be really good at controlling so he's not clanking. And then when the triceps are on there, try to pull the triceps into the ground.
Yes, but not like relaxing at the bottom.
Okay, yeah. So we're saying this.
We're saying the same thing.
Yes, I want the triceps loaded on the floor.
Yes.
And I want to pull into that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't want him to rest at the bottom.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so active at the bottom.
Yes.
Yeah. Making sure that Deanna isn't an idiot here. Because like the whole point of a floor press is the elbow settle, so we do want the triceps to rest on the floor, and then we can enhance that technique by pulling triceps into the floor harder to help lift the chest.
Rest is the wrong word.
Okay, fine, sure. Settle. We can say triceps settle on the floor.
Yes.
The internet's cutting out now, but again, I think that bottom end drop is going to be a lot of just kind of like learning to get the upper back in. And this bench versus day one, generally, so much better. It looks like someone that knows how to bench now. We just need to get them looking at someone that knows, looking like someone that knows how to bench really well. And that's going to be a better pull on the underrack instead of just pushing it out and kind of falling in. And then carrying that tension to the bottom. And again, I think the floor press will be a really good tool to force him to control the bottom end more so he's not clanking.
Yeah.
And then pull into the bottom end and lift chest to bar, which should help him out a whole lot when it comes to having a better bottom end on bench. I said bottom end so many times the last 30 seconds.
It's because you think about bottom ends a lot.
Apparently. But
wouldn't it be funny if the internet completely cut out and we couldn't get past 10?
well, this was the last one.
Oh, it was.
So he's 11.
Oh, he's 11.
He's 11.
Okay, amazing. We were supposed to make fun of him.
Yeah, I got lost in the thought. So get better at counting too.
Amazing. Yeah, that's perfect timing then if it's done.
Yep. So I guess that is a wrap for today. And if you guys want more help with your training, if you're stuck, you don't know what you're doing, you don't know how to make progress again, hit link below, join the team. We will get you sorted.
Bye.
Oh.